You mentioned education system, which at this point, interestingly, means almost two different things. Yes. There's what is going on with universities, and there's what is going on with how we would actually train people in these kinds of skills that we need, that would be good jobs. I guess it's a two-part question. On the university side, do you see what's going on there as mostly sort of just a sideshow minimizes it? It's incredibly important, but it is unrelated to the question of how we actually reskill correctly? Or do you think these two things fit together somehow, that we need to get the universities more engaged in this process and also have other ways to do it?
I think of it as extremely connected, though it's not necessarily obvious at the surface level. I mean, first of all, I never expect Harvard or Yale or, you know, the Ohio States of the world. They're not primarily going to be doing skilled craftsman training. Okay, some of the state schools you might see that, but really this is going to be something that happens with particular, you know, unions are going to have a big role in this, community colleges are going to have a big role in this, industry is going to have a big role in this. I don't think the skilled crafts are going to be brought back by the 4-year-plus university. That's just not their role. But what the 4-year-plus university, one of the most important things that it does, obviously it trains hopefully very smart people, but it produces really the ground level of the innovation that the economy is going to run on for the next 10 or 15, 20 years. Okay, so if I want people in Indiana to be manufacturing the next generation pharmaceuticals, those pharmaceuticals have to get developed in the first place. And for them to get developed in the first place, I need places like Harvard to be doing really groundbreaking biomedical research. What I don't need out of Harvard is for the science to be so broken that 80% of the biology papers produced don't actually replicate. And that reproducibility crisis is one of the main reasons why I think universities are broken. What I really don't need to happen is I can't let Harvard have such an explicitly racist and in violation of the Civil Rights Act approach to how it funds and trains scientists that the best and the brightest are being cut out of that process altogether. So these things are very much connected. But, I mean, look, I am not anti-university. I'm not anti-Harvard. What I am is a person who recognizes what should be obvious to every single person at every elite university in the country, which is the model is broken, it doesn't work, and they're violating the social contract they have with the people of the country, and the people are now saying, we need you to change. And these institutions are really going to be confronted, and thanks to President Trump, have already been confronted with a choice. You can accept democratic accountability and you can reform, or you can accept that the government is not going to treat you kindly, we're not going to fund your garbage, and we're not going to support you unless you do the job the American people need you to do.
That is very well said. I found myself at one of these universities speaking to a faculty board the day after the $9 billion Harvard announcement.
Did you tell them you knew me?
It may have come up. It may have come up.
I'm surprised you survived.
You know, the thing about the faculty board in Ivy League universities, it's not the most imposing environment in many respects.
They're not known for their toughness.
No, that is true. I'll let you stand on that particular point, but this actually happened to me a few times. I in fact also was scheduled to go to Canada 2 days after you made the Canada announcement. I may need to run my travel plans by some more folks. But it was fascinating to have this exact discussion and essentially to try to make the point, nobody wants you to fail, but you are in a sense a quasi-public institution. You are relying on enormous both explicit and implicit public subsidy and participation in this contract that you have been violating wholesale for a generation. And so our preference would be that you guys decide to reform, but if you don't, this is the alternative. What do you think, what does reform look like? You described some of the things that, you know, are particularly problems. I guess to some extent the reform is just stop doing that. But what do you aspire to for our higher education system?
I'd say a few things. I mean, one, most obviously, is why don't you just follow the civil rights laws of the country? Like, that's a very easy thing to do, and that nearly every elite university in the country is explicitly not doing. Okay, so that's one thing that they might consider doing. I think the second thing is they've got to be willing, and I have a friend of mine who's a geneticist, very bright, very bright young scientist. We have got to have a scientific community that is more open to unacceptable inquiry and that actually encourages bright young minds to go wherever the truth leads them. And I think that's where the universities have become almost quasi-theocratic or quasi-totalitarian societies. I mean, the way that I think about this is, I don't know what the voting, the voting in the 2024 election of Harvard University's faculty was. Okay, my guess is that at least 90% and probably 95% of them voted for Kamala Harris, right? Very brilliant Kamala Harris, of course. But, if you ask yourself a foreign election, a foreign country's election, and you say 80% of the people voted for one candidate, you would say, oh, that's kind of weird, right? That's like not a super healthy democracy. If you said, oh, 95% of people voted for one party's candidate, you would say that's North Korea. Right, that's totalitarian. That is impossible in a true place of free exchange for that to happen. And so I think the ideological diversity of these universities has to get much better. And I think that if that got better, if you actually had a place where people were open to debating these things and weren't terrified they were going to lose their job for saying something that was a little bit outside the Overton window, then I think the science would get better, the reproducibility would get better, the quality of the institution would be so much better. And that's what I want, because we need high-quality universities. Right now, the problem is we don't have them.
Absolutely.